Hello students, how are you? I hope you all are fine and enjoying your studies. So student, today we will start our new chapter. Our chapter is from class 7, History's book, chapter number 8, chapter name Devotional Paths to the Divine. So student, in this chapter we talk about prayer, bhajanas, kavalis and many other activities which is related to the bhakti. You may have seen people perform rituals of worship, even repeating the name of God in silence that we call jap. Some of them are moved to tears. So student, in this chapter we discuss about Sufi movement and bhakti movement. So student, let's start our chapter. So student, firstly I will tell you the idea of a supreme God. People came together through the growth of towns, trade and empires, and new ideas developed. The idea that all living things pass through countless cycles of birth and rebirth as per good and bad deeds was accepted. The idea that all human beings are not equal even at birth gained ground during this period. The belief that social privileges are due to birth in a noble or high caste was a subject of debate. People were attracted to the idea of Supreme God who could deliver them from the bondage if approached with devotion. Many people were uneasy with the idea of gods and goddesses. They turned to the teaching of the Buddha or the Jains. According to them, it was possible to overcome social differences and break the cycle of rebirth through personal effort. Other people felt attracted to the idea of Supreme God who could relieve them of the evils. Student, what is the idea of Supreme God? Listen carefully. The idea of Supreme God is that there is only one God in this world and it can be attained or approached with devotion or bhakti. The idea was advocated in Bhagavad Gita, grew in popularity in the early century of the Common Era. Shiva, Vishnu and Durga as supreme deities came to be worshipped through elaborate rituals. At the same time, gods and goddesses worshipped in different areas came to be identified with Shiva, Vishnu or Durga. In the process, local myths and legends became a part of the Puranic stories. Methods of worship recommended in the Puranas were introduced into the local cults. Eventually, the Puranas also laid down that it was possible for devotees to receive the grace of God regardless of their caste status. The idea of bhakti became so popular that even Buddhists and Jainis adopt these ideas. Even Buddhists and Jainis adopted these beliefs. So student, now I will tell you a new kind of bhakti in South India, Nayanars and Alvars. During the 7th to 9th centuries, new religious movement emerged. They were led by the Nayanars, saint devoted to Shiva, and Alvars, saints devoted to Vishnu. They came from all castes, including those considered untouchable, like the Puliyars and the Panars. They sharply criticized the Buddhists and the Jainas. They preached ardent love of Shiva or Vishnu as the path of salvation. They drew upon the ideals of love and heroism as found in the Sangam literature. Student, what is Sangam literature? I will tell you. Sangam literature, the earliest example of Tamil literature composed during the early century of the Common Era. These Nayanars and the Alvars went from place to place, composing exquisite poems in praise of the deities in the villages which they visited and set them to music. Students, now I will tell you how were links between Bhakti tradition and temple worship strengthened. Students, between the 10th and 12th century, the Chola and Pandya kings built big temples around many of the shrines. These shrines were visited by the saint poets. They strengthened the link between the bhakti tradition and temple worship. Temples were dedicated to respective gods, showing their devotion to their deity. Students, there were 63 nayanars. There are two sets of compilations of their songs, Tivaram and Tirukakam, and there were 12 alvars. Their songs were compiled in the Divya Prabandham. Students, I will tell you, hagiography means writing of saints' lives. Hagiography or religious biographies of the alvars and the nayanars were also composed. Today we use these texts as sources for writing histories of the bhakti tradition. Students, now I will tell you two influential philosophers, Shankara and Ramanuja. Shankara, one of the most influential philosophers of India, was born in Kerala in the 8th century. He was an advocate of Advaita. What is mean of Advaita? It is the doctrine of the oneness of the individual soul and the Supreme God, which is the ultimate reality. Its mean ultimate reality is equal to individual soul plus Supreme God. He taught that Brahmans, the only or ultimate reality, was formless and without any attributes. He considered the world around us to be an illusion or Maya, and he preached renunciation of the world and adoption of the path of knowledge to understand the true nature of Brahman and attain salvation. Other one is Ramanuja. Ramanuja, born in Tamil Nadu in the 11th century, was deeply influenced by the alvars. According to him, the best means of attaining salvation was through intense devotion to Vishnu. Vishnu, in his grace, helps the devotee to attain the bliss of union with him. He propounded the doctrine of Vishishtadvaita or qualified ones, in that the soul, even when united with the Supreme God, remained distinct. Ramanuja's doctrine greatly inspired the new strand of bhakti which developed in North India afterwards. So student, now I will tell you Basavana Veershaivism. The connection between the Tamil Bhakti movement and temple worship is best represented in the Veerashaiv movement initiated by Basavana and his companion like Alma Prabhu and Akkama Mahadevi. This movement began in Karnataka in the mid-12th century. The Veershaivas argued strongly for the equality of all human beings and against Brahminical idea about caste and the treatment of women. They were also against all forms of ritual and idol worship. Now student, this Bhakti movement spread in all over India. Now I will tell you about Maharashtra, the saints of Maharashtra. From the 13th to 17th centuries, Maharashtra saw a great number of saint poets whose songs in simple Marathi continue to inspire people. The most important among them were Dhyaneshwara or Gyaneshwara, Namdev, Eknath or Tukaram, as well as women like Sakhubai and the family of Chokhamela, who belong to the untouchable Mahar caste. This regional tradition of bhakti focused on the Vitthal. Vitthal is a form of Vishnu. Vitthal temple in Pandharpur, as well as on the notion of the personal God residing in the hearts of all people. Students, I will tell you the views of these saints. These saints poets rejected all forms of ritualism, outward display of pity and social differences based on birth. In fact, they even rejected the idea of renunciation and preferred to live with their families. Renunciation means leave their families. It means go to sannyas, earning their livelihood like any other person while humbly serving fellow human beings in needs. A new humanist idea emerged as they insisted that bhakti lay in sharing others' pain. The famous Gujarati saint Narsi Mehta said, "They are Vaishnavas who understand the pain of others." Now, student, I will tell you about Nathpanthis, Siddhas, and Yogis. A number of religious groups that emerged during this period criticized the ritual and other aspects of conventional religion and the social order using simple logical arguments. Among them were the Nathpanthis, Siddhacharas, and Yogis. They advocated renunciation of the world. It means they said you leave your family life and go to sannyas. To them, the path to salvation lay in meditation on the formless ultimate reality and the realization of oneness with it. To achieve this, they advocated intense training of the mind and body through practice like yogasana, breathing exercises, and meditation. These groups became particularly popular among low caste. They became a popular force in northern India. So, student, now I will tell you about Islam and Sufism. The saints had much in common with the Sufis, so much so that it is believed that they adopted many ideas of each other. Sufis were Muslim mystics. They rejected outward religiosity and emphasized love and devotion to God and compassion toward all fellow human beings. Islam propagated strict monotheism or submission to one God. It means they believe God is one. In the 8th and 9th centuries, religious scholars developed different aspects of the holy law, that is Shariat, and the theology of Islam. The Sufis often rejected the elaborate rituals and codes of behavior demanded by Muslim religious scholars. They sought union with God, much as a lover seeks. Like the saint poets, the Sufis too composed poems expressing their feelings and a rich literature in prose, including anecdotes. Anecdotes mean a short, amusing, or interesting story about a real incident or person, and fables developed around them. The great Sufis of Central Asia were Ghazlis, Rumis, and Sadi. The Sufis too believed that the heart can be trained to look at the world in a different way. They developed elaborate method of training using jikar, contemplation, sama, raqs, discussion of parables, breath control, etc. under the guidance of a master or peer. Thus emerged the silsila, a spiritual genealogy of Sufi teachers, each following a slightly different method of instruction and ritual practice. A large number of Sufis from Central Asia settled in Hindustan from the 11th century onwards. This process was strengthened with the establishment of the Delhi Sultanate, when several major Sufi centers developed all over the subcontinent. The Chishti Silsila was among the most influential orders. It had a long line of teachers like Khwaja Muinuddin Chishti of Ajmer, Qutbuddin Bakhtiyar Kaki of Delhi, Baba Farid of Punjab, Khwaja Nizamuddin Aulia of Delhi, and Bandanwaz Gisudras of Gulbarga. Students, now I will tell you how did the Sufi master carry their activities. Number 1. The Sufi master held their assemblies in their khankas or hospices. It's mean house of rest for travelers, especially one kept by a religious order. Number 2. Devotees of all descriptions, including members of the royalty and nobility, ordinary people flocked to these khankas. Number 3. They discussed spiritual matters. Number 4. They sought the blessing of the saints in solving their worldly problem. Number 5. They simply attend the music and dance session. Student, now I will tell you about Dargah and why did people throng there. The tomb
or dargah of a Sufi saint
become a place of pilgrimage to which thousands of people of all faiths thronged. Often people attributed Sufi master with miraculous power that could relieve others for their illness and troubles. So student, let's start our question answer. First question. What did the Puranic stories consist of? Answer. The Puranic stories consisted of local myths and legends. Number 2. Who were the Puliyars and the Panaras? Answer. They were considered untouchables. Question number 3. How many Alvars were there? Answer. There were 12 Alvars. Next question. Name the set of compilation of Alvar's song, Divya Prabandham. Next question. Name any two great Sufis of Central Asia. Answer. Ghazali and Rumi. So student, fill in the blanks. First, Shankara was an advocate of dash. Second, Ramanuja was influenced by the dash. Third, dash, dash and dash were advocates of Virshaivism. Number 4, dash was an important center of the Bhakti tradition in Maharashtra. Next, in the process, local myths and legends become a part of the dash stories. Next, Alvar's songs were compiled in the dash. So student, tell me. First is Advaita. Second, Alvars. Third, Baswana, Alma Prabhu and Akka Mahadevi. Next is Pandharpur. Next, Puranic. Next, Divya Prabandham. Students, how many Alvars were there? There were 12 Alvars. How many Nayanars were there? There were 63 Nayanars. Student, where is the Vitthal temple located? Answer. Vithala is a form of Vishnu temple located in Pandharpur. Student, who were Sufis? Sufis were Muslim mystics. What is hagiographies? Hagiographies are religious biographies of the Alvars and Nayanars. So student, I hope you understand this chapter. In this chapter, we discuss about Supreme God and Nathpanthis, Yogis, Siddhas, and also talk about Alvars and Nayanars and Sufism. Student, in part 2, we again meet. Till then, bye-bye.